Hello.
Hello. Who have I got on the line?
Hey, this is Boone.
Hey, thanks for joining, man.
Happy to be here. Thanks. Who's this?
This is Bennett Sondeno.
Oh, good, man. Finally, glad to meet you.
Yeah, same here. I wish we were doing it over, some hot lead on the range, but this is great. Thank you
Yeah.
for being
It's my pleasure, man. Any place I can help out with war fighters, especially on something that saves lives, I'm there 100% of the time.
cool. Cool. Thank you. Well, I guess we might as well get started. I know we've got some people who are going to show up to join us, but this is going to be recorded, so I'll just have it up on our Facebook page for anybody to catch in the future when they want to. But
Sure.
I'll give a little intro here. I've got on the phone with me Boone Cutler. He is a war fighter. He is a war fighter advocate. He has served our nation's army multiple times. Last time, he was a sergeant of a tactical PSYOP team in Sadr City, Iraq. He's been back here. He is a media personality. He's an author, and most importantly, at least in my opinion, author of the Spartan Pledge, which I'm certain has saved warfighter lives. And man, that means a lot to me. So thanks for coming on the show. Anything you want to say to anybody, just to help introduce yourself?
No, just happy to be here. I mean, it's humbling and it strengthens me at the same time. Just anything that we do as a community for the community, I think is the right thing to do. Anything that has to do with cannabis totally 100% changed everything, turned everything around for me. And of course, I'm not just talking about THC. I'm talking about different cannabinoids too. So I'm here, man. I picked up the call and I'll be here till we're done.
Excellent. So can you share some of your experience? What led you into cannabis medicine?
For me, cannabis started, really, it was my last resort, and I wish it hadn't been. I got done with Walter Reed. I got medevaced out of Iraq in 2006, and then I ended up at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, and I was there from 2006 to 2008. So I was there during the whole neglect scandal period, and I went through all that stuff. And at that time, I got to be honest, Walter Reed was a chemical prison in so many different ways. And a lot of guys feel that way. Now, I used to put a lot of blame and be pretty angry about that, but I don't know what the other folks were dealing with. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what they were dealing with. I could just tell from being there that the staff they just didn't have enough people. They didn't have enough. I mean, there was just not enough medical care for the injured, sick, wounded, the ill. It was just rough. So I think maybe they did the best they could with what they had. But had cannabis been available, and if it was available now, I think it would be better. So I ended up on the combat cocktail. I did the zombie dope for a few years, even after I left Walter Reed. It continued into the VA system.
And for those of us who don't know what zombie dope is, can you enlighten us a bit?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Zombie dope is all the psych meds. It's all the psychotropic meds. It's all the benzodiazepines, heavy on benzodiazepines, usually mixed in with an opiate and some sort of SSRI or SSNRI. I think that's how you say it. And it's just this cornucopia of drugs. And at the end of the day, it turns you into a zombie. You're just completely detached. And if you're trying to work through any issues with traumatic brain injury, it makes that pretty much impossible. If you're trying to work through any issues with PTSD, well, you can forget that. You're not going to work through anything. You're just going to be numbed out. Excuse me. And so that's a major problem. It was a major problem for me. And then I got fed up with it. What's that?
I'm sorry. Please keep going.
That was a major problem for me. It was just the zombie dope, and I couldn't. I just could not do the things that needed to be done. I couldn't get better. I couldn't heal. I couldn't think. Couldn't function.
So it took away your ability to process.
Yeah, it took away my ability to process. And, I'll just say outright, I think anybody who is treating people with, I think it's criminal. I think it's a criminal act to treat people with traumatic brain injury with psych meds. I think it's disgusting. I think it's sick. I think everybody should be either using stem cells or, cannabinoids or something that's not affecting the long-term chemistry of the brain. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I don't know why we keep trying to do that. There's other things that do work. I wrote a book about it called FPL, and it's, there's just other things that work. So my whole, everything that I talk about is also my journey, and also my journey in being, walking alongside other warfighters as they're going through their journey. And the zombie dope was just all bad, and I had to get off of it. And I got off of it, and I was still having insomnia issues. I mean, I had insomnia issues on the zombie dope. I had insomnia issues off the dope. And then one night I was just kind of laying in bed and thought, I've tried everything there is. Literally, I've tried everything medical science had to offer for 4 or 5 years. Did everything, and it didn't work. The only thing I hadn't tried was cannabis. And there was this kid the day before who had asked me at work, a young guy. He goes, "Hey, you look like hell. What's wrong?" I had just gotten out of the hospital, so I was off the zombie dope. And I said, I can't sleep. And it had been like 2 days. I hadn't gotten any sleep at all. And for those that don't know out there, if you're dealing with, some serious PTSD issues and you don't sleep for 2 days, you're kind of funky. I mean, it's just a fact. You're just funky. I mean, shit's going to go funky. And I said, he offered me weed. He goes, "Why don't you just smoke pot?" And I was like, "Dude, that ain't me, man. I'm not one of those guys. I don't smoke pot." Yeah. And I just completely blew him off. And then that night, I'm laying there in bed, and I'm like, I've done everything. I've literally done everything medical science has to offer. I can't do anything else. None of this has worked. What's the only thing I haven't tried? Well, cannabis. And it was a total fuck it moment. And I was like, fuck it. Bring it on. I cannot do this anymore. I'm going to fucking die. Mm-hmm. And the next day I say, "Give me some weed." And he hooked it up quick. And that night I went home, I smoked weed, and I slept for 5 hours. And it was like, what in the holy fuck? Why haven't I done this before? And then I was like, oh, maybe it's not real. Maybe it's just a fluke because I was tired because I'd been up, and I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go any more days without sleep. So I tried it the next night, and I slept for 5 hours. I hadn't slept for 5 hours in 5 fucking years. Okay. So, yeah. So it was like, what? Okay. It was like the Matrix completely crumbled in that moment. And I was like, holy shit, we're all getting fucked here.
Yeah.
And why haven't I tried this before? And then I started really getting into the legitimate research on it. It's like, what? Wait, you're telling me it's not addictive or has the addiction rate of coffee? You're telling me you can't stop your breathing when you're asleep? And I'm like, I know so many guys that literally died in their sleep because they stopped breathing. Who are on opiates and on all the other shit. And usually they were, chugging it down with some alcohol too. And I did the same thing. When I was on all the zombie dope and it wasn't working, I'm not going to say I didn't have responsibility, because I always have responsibility. And that's why I got off the dope. But at the time, I was just in this free fall. And so I would take all the zombie dope, and then I'd, wash it down with NyQuil and a good amount of scotch, because that was, I just kept adding to it. I was basically doing what the doctors said. Oh, that isn't working. Okay, we'll add to it. That isn't working. Okay, we'll add to it. That isn't working. Okay, we'll add to it. Well, I was playing the same game on my end.
Right.
Because I had done everything. And then when I just stopped everything, as far as the zombie dope, I was still on the opiates for a couple of years, or for a year, maybe I forget how long it was, but until CBD really proliferated, I was still on the opiates, which was hard, but at least I was off the psych meds and I could get sleep and things were better. And then CBD pops up and I'm like, okay, this is a new thing, because at that time I was on the radio, and I can't do it. Some guys do it. I can't be on the radio, on cannabis. I just can't. I can't.
THC in your bloodstream.
Yeah. It's with THC in the bloodstream. It's just not my thing. Some guys can do it. I can't do it. So I was still using opiates, and then CBD pops in, and it was just like, wait a minute. I walked off the opiates. Now I detox several times. Like anybody knows who's done opiates, you have to detox maybe a couple times a year so they keep working. And going through that detox process, it's painful. I mean, it's painful. and you're kicking dope. I mean, that's all there is. You're kicking dope. That's all there is to it. And I started using CBD, and it was like, I walked off the opiates. I just literally walked off the opiates. I didn't have the withdrawals like I had in the past. I didn't have it was just better. And then I started playing around with the different cannabinoids. I started playing around with THC and CBD, and now I'm playing around with CBG, and I really want to get into some CBN, and I mean, all this stuff, because cannabinoids, a lot of people don't understand. Just like you have opiates, well, there's different types of opiates. You can be taking, you could be taking what is the little ones? Anyway, there's different pills you can take, whether it's it doesn't matter.
Hydrocodone, Oxycontin.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry about that. Yeah. Obviously, my word finding skills still suck. But yeah, exactly. So opiates is a classification of medication. It's not a medication. Well, cannabinoids is a classification. It's not a medication. Exactly. And I think there just needs to be so much more research, and it can be done. There's just so much more that can be done to understand the effects of cannabinoids and how they can help people. Again, we're talking about something that is non-addictive, or at worst has the addiction rate of coffee. How many coffee drinkers are out there? And it cannot stop your breathing, and you cannot overdose on it. Why are we not working with this? Why isn't this more of a priority? And these are my questions, and that's why I want to join the fight. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you probably saw a lot of drugs be replaced just by cannabinoids.
Oh yeah. I mean, all the psych meds, all the sleep meds, and all the pain meds have been replaced by cannabinoids.
How many prescriptions was that?
Oh man, dozen or more. Jeez. At different times.
Jeez. And is this a common experience among vets?
It's a very common experience. I think it's better now. Over the last few years, the opioid thing, when that hit the nation's consciousness, and people started complaining about it, they started training doctors differently, so they started pulling the opioids back. So that changed things. But before that, I mean, I was getting, I had a football-sized bottle of opiates every month I was taking. I was taking like 90 milligrams of morphine, 70 milligrams of Oxycontin every day.
Whew.
Every day. And then we'd switch them out, like, okay, here, take my oxy, let me get some hydrocodone for a while, and let me get some Percocets for a while. I'll switch those around, and okay, we'll do morphine. Okay, now I'll do morphine. I'll do oxy for the breakthrough pain. I mean, it was ridiculous, this juggling that went on with these opiates for years, and it just didn't need to happen. And as a result, not only are guys not getting better because of these prescriptions, they're getting worse, because those opiates, they're going to blow out your kidneys. Before I had stem cell therapy, my kidneys were sitting at, stage 2, stage 3 kidney disease, which did not help my heart. I mean, it just goes on and on, the problems these drugs are causing, especially the amount and the frequency that they're given within the veteran community.
Yeah, it's my limited experience with veterans and the VA has been that it seems that they prescribe these drugs, many drugs, just almost haphazardly. And then there's no plan to get somebody off of them at any point. I had a late friend, God rest his soul, man, I miss him. He was on, I mean, he sounded like you. He was on so many meds, so many opiates every single day, and he was just dying. The neuropathy from the Agent Orange exposure he got in NAM was, I mean, it was killing him. He was just dying in a hospital bed in his own living room. And then the VA cut off his pain meds, said, "You've lived too long," told the guy, "You have lived too long," and took his pain management away. He was done. He was ready to die. I mean, obviously you can tell I get livid talking about this even now. He found cannabis. He quit cold turkey. 3 different kinds of opiates he was taking every day, all day. He cut that stuff out cold turkey and went to cannabis. And you know what? He didn't die. That should have killed him. coming off of opiates like that, I mean, your system can't handle that kind of instant detox. You'll die. But he
No,
managed
it
to
is
survive.
very traumatic. And there's a when the VA did not. The VA is much better now. They have gotten better. There's no doubt about it. But when this stuff was going on, they did pull guys. They pulled guys opiates, and they weren't detoxing them. They just didn't renew their prescriptions. So that happened to a lot of guys. And fortunately, a lot of guys got off the opiates and found other ways and other modalities to help themselves. A lot of them got pushed into cannabis. Unfortunately, at the same time that happened, the price for heroin on the street came way down. Fentanyl came out and started supplementing the heroin, so the price came way down. And I wasn't getting calls, help calls for things like heroin. I didn't get. I mean, I went years and years without calls on that, and then I started getting multiple calls on that right when they pulled the opiates. So, there's we're gonna have to deal with that too now. We're gonna have to deal with that. But I can't help but think that had cannabinoids been available across the board for everybody, none of this would have happened. We could have just avoided it. Now, I know as I've interviewed people over the years, different warfighters in different eras, I talked to the Vietnam veterans. A lot of those guys, the guys that came back and drank, ended up in jail, ended up in prison, ended up in problems with the law, ended up, just problems. The guys who dropped out and just smoked weed like they did in the 60s, they just literally just dropped out of society, lived on a farm somewhere and smoked weed. Those guys came back to society in about 2 years with no criminal records, and they did fine. They went on to get advanced degrees and go to college and have families, and they just did better than the guys who came home and drank.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the guys who came home and drank didn't want to take that other option, that quote unquote hippie option, because they were against it. But because of the, people identify with things in their personality, they didn't see themselves as hippie. Therefore, they would not use cannabis. But the ones who related to the hippies used cannabis got better faster.
Yeah. That's amazing. Do you think there is a greater openness within the VA to cannabis medicine these days?
It depends on where you go. Some yes, some no, and still individual doctors are going to have their own bias. I haven't had the issues. A lot of people. I'm so open about it and I'm so public about it that when I walk in, they know I have that, and I also have a pretty good voice. So if they treat me wrong, they know they're going to hear about it. But so I haven't had that issue, but I've had some great doctors at the VA who just want you to explain, your cannabis usage. And then they're like, okay, and make sure you watch out for this. Edibles are better than smokables. I mean, they're not giving me advice, but they're not pounding me on it. But I'm also not walking in there asking for stuff. If I was walking in there asking for oxy and saying I smoke weed, well, then they would have a problem with me. They would deny my opiates because I use cannabis, which I think also, that needs to be reviewed. When I was I was traveling the country. I was traveling. This was years ago. This was when things were not as good. And I stopped in Columbus, Ohio, because I needed to get a refill on, of all things, opiates. And I had to get a refill. And it was really weird because I was taking hydrochloroquine, fucking, what's the one that starts with an H?
Let's see.
Opiate. You said it earlier. I said it earlier, and I forgot it again. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. They pushed me into hydrocodone. Yeah, they pushed me into morphine. They're like, we don't prescribe that in the dosage you want it, so you have to take morphine. And I was like, okay, great. And that's really when I got kind of hooked on morphine. But I went in there and they said, oh, it's no problem. Yeah, we'll refill you. You're considered a visiting veteran. We'll refill your prescription, but you got to go through these, got to jump through a couple hoops first. And I was like, okay, no problem. And it's not like I ran out early or anything like that. It was just a normal refill. I wasn't in there med seeking because I ran out early because I took too much. It was a normal refill. Well, they asked for a urinalysis, and of course I gave them a urinalysis. Didn't think twice about it. And after a period of time, a few hours, they gave me my prescription. I left. Then I get this call about a week later, and there's this gal on the phone, and she works in the whatever clinic I went through. And she says, Mr. Cutler? And I said, yeah. She says, well, this is the Columbus, Ohio VA. Your urinalysis came back positive for cannabis, for marijuana. And I said, yeah, I know. I have no doubt it did. I use marijuana. I live in Nevada. I'm a medical marijuana patient. And she says, well, we don't do that here. You cannot come back to our VA unless you go through rehab. They would no longer treat me at that VA unless I went to rehab.
Right. Wouldn't keep giving you addictive opiates because you were taking non-addictive cannabinoids.
No, they at that time it had nothing to. They didn't even mention the conflict between the two like they have a conflict now. At that time, it was I could have as many. I mean, they were giving me morphine, but the fact that I had taken a urinalysis and popped hot for marijuana. Well, it was because I had marijuana in my system that they were like, "Oh, marijuana's bad. You need to go to rehab."
Right.
By the way, on your way to rehab, go pick up those morphine. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, like I said, I can't slam the VA. I used to slam them a lot more. But they've done some really great things. Even recently with the Spartan Pledge, the VA has, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the VA. They're actually using the Spartan Pledge now in their suicide prevention programs. And, that's not nationwide. It's at least it's in the state of Nevada, and hopefully it'll be in some other states. COVID ruined, some big events we had across the country with the VA this last year. Hopefully we'll square that away and get things hopping again. Do these Spartan Pledge ceremony days or these Spartan Pledge days at different VAs are a lot of fun. It's great. It's very helpful to a lot of people. It's just really good. So, I mean, I can't say that the VA hasn't been making changes in the right direction. I can just say it's a long, arduous process. And if you want to make those changes happen, you got to be out in front. You got to be leading these things. It's not something you could sit back and just bitch about. You got to be out there. You got to be pushing. And that's the way you make the change happen. And it is happening.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad to know that they are progressing. Has the I understand that they're using the Spartan Pledge as an exit pledge for the military now. Is that correct?
Congressman Brian Mask in Florida, who was a wounded combat veteran, he created something based on the Spartan Pledge. And I know Brian; he's a good guy. We've spoken. I mean, he's a good dude, and he's been very helpful. We were speaking about the Spartan Pledge, and the next thing I know, he throws it on the House floor, and it turns into law. And but as it's changed a little bit, they morphed it a little bit, because of whatever. But and they couldn't just use mine because it was already copyrighted and trademarked. So, and it's not mine. I just wrote it. It belongs to the community. But so they changed it, but they called it the Oath of Exit rather than the Spartan Pledge. And it's a way that it's something that you're supposed to do when you leave the military to kind of give you an azimuth on which way to travel as you go through your transition.
Sure. And have you, is cannabis use as far as replacing zombie dope and other drugs, is that fairly commonplace among vets?
Yeah, it is. It's becoming more and more. It's becoming more and more normalized. The first time I spoke about cannabis on social media was probably 2011, maybe 2010, and it was crickets. And I mean, I was on big pages, within the community. And at that time, they weren't choking the hell out of our feeds or anything, so it was pretty free discussion. And it was crickets, man. Nobody would talk about it. They're afraid to talk about it. And now people openly talk about it. And so, yeah, the cannabis thing, and there's been some really good folks out there. I was watching a video probably a month ago, Nick Irving, Reaper. He's riding a skateboard, smoking a joint, I forgot where he was at. So it's become more normalized, so he's not really out there pushing the cannabis thing, but he's an active proponent. If he's not an activist, he's at least a proponent. And so it's things like that. And, it's been very helpful that like the Farm Bill passed. So CBD can get around the country easier. And people are like, hey, this stuff's kind of okay. And then it kind of opens the door, and people talk about cannabis being cannabis or marijuana being a gateway drug. And I'm like, no, that's not marijuana. That's milk. Like, what do you mean? I said, well, I've never seen anybody, get hooked on hard drugs who didn't drink milk as a child. So milk must be a gateway drug. It's just, we have to expose these crazy arguments that have been put out before, like gateway drugs and things like that. And,
Exactly.
and just, normalize it and let people know the facts. And the 3 facts are, it's non-toxic to humans. It can't stop your breathing, and it's non-addictive. So therefore, it is safer than grapes.
Right.
That's a fact.
Yeah. And man, as a medical patient myself, I can't even. It's such in a different realm from pharmaceutical drugs that it's so difficult even to compare. I mean, the side effects of any of the number of drugs that I've taken were so bad that I couldn't wait to get off of them. And I mean, cannabis just doesn't have that effect. So it just doesn't hamper life the way the pharmaceuticals like to. So I've
seen guys. No, it's a lot better. It's just better. I'm sorry everybody out there doesn't agree. I'm just telling you it's better. And I've seen guys. I had a call from a friend of mine who's getting ready to have back surgery. He's been in horrible pain. He's been waiting on a surgery for like a year, 2 years. They tried the spine nerve stimulator on it. They tried all this stuff on it, trying to avoid surgery, and it just wasn't working. And I was telling him about cannabis because people ask me, because I talk about it openly. And so I was telling him about cannabis, and I was explaining to him, how to use leafly and to research different strains. It's important to get the right strain, because I've had guys come to me and go, oh, I tried that, and it didn't work for me. I said, what strain did you use? Well, I don't know. It's just some stuff my buddy gave me. Okay, right. Well, again, there are variants, and you need to find the strain that works best for you. So my buddy calls me the other night, and he says, I took, 100 milligrams of CBD and 50 milligrams of THC, and it really does help. It really does help. And I'm like, okay, good. Good. I'm happy for you. And I'm happy for everybody. It helps, because he was on opiates for a long time too, and probably a little bit too much drinking as well. So, this is what stops those things. We can get rid of cirrhosis and suicide, or at least strongly diminish them, as soon as we start accepting cannabinoids, because people are going to drink less, and they're not going to want to kill themselves as much.
Exactly. Yeah, they've shown both that suicides and alcohol abuse go down in states when cannabis is made available. So yeah, it just saves lives. There's no good reason not to do it. So
as far as it being illegal, I'll throw you another one that I think people should pay attention to: are law enforcement officers. I don't want to see. Seriously. A family man trying to raise a family, doing a noble job, being a police officer. This guy's going to blow out a knee chasing a guy down with a dime bag? Really?
Amen.
That's sensible? That's not sensible. That's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Well, and you mentioned being in Nevada, where, of course, they've got adult use regulation now. Have you seen benefits from legalization, specifically as a medical user?
Yes, because now I'm not relegated to just what the guy over at where my mailbox is can sell me over at the Del Taco parking lot. I basically take what you can get when you're not in a state that has been that the prohibition has been stopped, against cannabis. When you can go into a dispensary and you can talk, if these bud tenders are very, very knowledgeable, they really are. I give them a lot of credit. Most of them. I haven't run into anybody that was kind of nutty, and they'll walk you through things. Oh, it's insomnia. Well, look at this one, and then you can look at it. You can look at all, look at all the everything that's in it, and you can see how pure it is. You can look right at it. It's right there, and then. You look at the name, you go to leafly.com, and you can look up the name and see the things that it helps with and go, okay, yeah, this is what I want. This is what I need. Now you're making decisions for yourself. And if that strain isn't right for you, they'll recommend another one. You look it up on leafly.com. Oh yeah, this one sounds better. I think this is the one I'll take. So you couldn't do that before. You just kind of had to, okay, I'll meet you at the Del Taco parking lot at 7:30. And then you get there, and you got to get one vehicle to the next, and you got to make a little bit of small talk, exchange your cash, get your baggie, and you're out of there. You don't know what the hell's in the bag.
Right. What pesticides, what growth regulators, whatever. You're at the mercy of the grower, and you don't know him. So yeah, regulation has health benefits for sure. The access issue. Do vets? I mean, do you find that there is reticence for veterans to access a medical program, whereas they might possibly simply walk into an adult use store and pick up medicine? Is that a
Well, see, here's the problem with the medical program and the warfighter community. It's the Second Amendment. It's the Second Amendment issues, because if you have a medical card, and I think it's question 11 alpha on the ATF form 4473, they ask you, it says about medical marijuana use. And if you check yes on there, well, you're not going to get a firearm.
Yep.
So, and if someone runs a background and sees you got a medical card and you're trying to, purchase a firearm, well, then they could create problems for you. And even if they can't, even if they wouldn't, the appearance, and that's the judgment. That's what people think.
Yep.
And if you have an adult use and it's legal in your state, well, then you can answer no to that question, just like everything else. And so, because there's no record, it's easier there. So the biggest conflict that guys are having with just medical use is the requiring of a card, and then the conflict that it has with the ATF form 4473.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have seen that question, and I understand the reticence. So that's something else we need to change. That's a federal issue. Once we get the federal prohibition ended, I'm sure that will disappear from that question section, and I can't wait. So that's something.
Well, for sure, and it'll happen. Things are moving faster now. Things have moved faster in the last 10 years than they did in the previous 20.
Oh yeah. Well, and now that we're at a majority of states that have medical, and over a third that have adult use, I mean, it's just coming. It's a watershed moment, and we're on the downslope, so it's coming. But I can't wait till it gets here. That's why we're working so hard, and we've got legislation at the session this year. And this Friday, in fact, we've got a committee hearing at the Judiciary Committee in the House, and they're going to be discussing it. Hopefully, it'll get passed out of committee and on to the full House for a vote. But I mean, we really need this.
No, you've got to get it out of committee, and there's the key phrases, the things like, what's the situation? You got to forgive me, I forget things. What is the bill specifically that you're trying to get passed? Is it for adult use?
Yes, it's all encompassing. So it's a decrim, adult use regulation, and medical bill.
Okay, so full boat. And the thing is, when you're sitting there and I'm sure you have people lined up already who are going to speak, before the committee and explain things. That's good to do, and it's good to make sure that. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to tell these people, if we say it works, how can you say it doesn't?
Right.
And the facts is, again, I'll give you the 3 facts. It's non-addictive, or at worst has the addiction rate of coffee. It cannot stop your breathing, and it's non-toxic to humans.
Right.
So, would you outlaw carrots? No. Okay. So this is what we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about carrots.
Right. There's more people going to die of peanuts this year than have ever died of cannabis. So it's a silly argument, but
you said peanuts, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
My connection was crazy. Yeah. Anyway.
No worries. So if you had something that you could say to Wyoming lawmakers as they consider this bill, what would it be?
Well, it's like this, I would say this to anybody, any lawmaker, any citizen of the United States, any person that's suffering. You don't need it until you need it. And when you need it, you want to make sure it's available. And you might not need it right now, but there might be a day that you do. There might be a day that somebody in your family does. And then where are you going to be sitting when you were that guy who was, playing politics and didn't vote yes? At the end of the day, it is safer than grapes. At the end of the day, it is non-toxic to humans. It cannot stop your breathing. The addiction rate is at worst of coffee. How many coffee drinkers are lawmakers? So these are the things that are just the simple facts. And if we say it works, how can they say it doesn't?
Right.
I mean, all the way around, there's been enough of a mandate among the citizenry that this not only has to be taken seriously. I would guess anybody who votes against it, I would be looking into them and see what other agendas they have, because it's not for the citizenry.
Right. Even here in Wyoming, we've got a majority support for adult use. We've got 75% support for decrim, and we've got over 85% support for medical. So the legislators that like to say, oh, I can't vote for this, I'll lose my position in the legislature because they'll vote me out. That well, for one, they're focused inappropriately on keeping their positions versus doing what is right. And two, they're not right. The people are going to be behind them if they support this. And I really hope that they wake up to that notion, because I mean, even here in very conservative Wyoming, the people are very behind this. I mean, we're so supportive of cannabis medicine, we're begging for it. So.
Well, good. I'm glad you're leading the charge, man. It's very, very important, and it's just going to save lives. I mean, again, go back to the law enforcement issue. Most cops, you say, hey, you go to a party and everybody's drinking, what are you going to think? You're thinking, oh, I'm probably going to have to get in a fight here. You go to somebody's party and everybody's smoking weed, and what are you going to get into? Nothing. If somebody's got to go to jail, you throw them the cuffs and say, hey, put those on, get in the back of the car, and they'll do it. I mean, they're the most compliant prisoners on the planet. And nobody's got to get hurt. So, all the way around, there's been so much bad propaganda against marijuana for a host of reasons. There's racial issues behind it. There's money issues behind it. There's the alcohol industry that had a whole lot to do with bad propaganda against marijuana, because they know, they would lose a ton of market share if marijuana was legal. On and on, big pharma, on and on and on. There's so many drugs that I was on that were supposed to do what marijuana actually does, and it does it well.
Oh man, you're preaching, man. That's the truth. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and having this conversation with me today. It's excellent to talk to you. I've been following you for a long time. I greatly appreciate your posting and what you do for the warfighter community. This book is fantastic. I'm very, very much enjoying it. I'm most of the way through Call Sign Voodoo now, and man, I wish you were here so you could sign it for me. I tell you what, you've added a lot to the warfighter community, and it's an honor just to talk to you, sir. Is there anything else you'd want to share with Wyoming today?
Well, I would also share that anybody who is any warfighters out there that are listening to this right now, and you've got medical conditions from your military service, please pick up FPL, Final Protective, or excuse me, it's what it stands for. FPL is Final Protective Line of the military, but we're calling it functional lifestyle, personal lifestyle. Sorry, it's my own issues today with they gave me this medication. Here's where I'm an idiot. I'll admit to everybody right now. I went to my neurologist. I get chronic migraines, and the neurologist says there's this new medication, and I'm like, oh, cool, a new medication. And I says, a narcotic? No, it's not narcotic. I'm like, okay, well then I'm interested. And she says, you just put it under your tongue, and if you want to try it, and it gets rid of your migraine. And it does it. Sometimes it gets rid of for 48 hours. I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to try that. So I asked, is there any cognitive issues? Because I have TBI and I have problems with word finding and noun aphasia and things like this. My doctors know this. And I talk. Like right now, we're on the show. I'm talking. I've lost words that I should have been able to find. And so I asked my doctors, any problem with that? No, there's no problem with that. Okay, cool. Well, guess what? There's exactly a problem with that. And so again, I strayed from my own protocol, trying to find something else that pharma throws me. And I don't blame my doctor. I don't think anybody knows how these drugs react, especially with guys who have traumatic brain injury. So now I've got to fight through this thing where if I just would have stuck with what I had, again, I just haven't found anything better than cannabis. And right. I've tried everything.
Amen, man. That's a true statement. That's a true statement. And there's a lot of us who have experienced it. And I just thank you for coming on today and telling us your experience.
Yeah, if you're a warfighter out there with health issues from military service, please get FPL. Read it. It's short. It's TBI friendly. You can read it if you have TBI, and I'm hoping it helps you. And half the proceeds go back to Task Force Dagger, the Special Operations Forces health initiatives.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you again. Thank you, sir. Thank you for everything you've done, and thanks for joining me today. And I just hope your endeavor continues to be well blessed.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Let me know what you need from me. I'm happy to help.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have a good day.
Have a good day. Out.